The challenge. The crystalline chandeliers of Lady Zthoria's orbital mansion cast dancing rainbows across the gathering of the galaxy's most powerful beings. Space Station Elysium Prime orbited majestically above New Terra, the most prestigious human colony outside the solar system. Tonight's charity gala had drawn the usual crowd of corporate titans, diplomatic ambassadors, and their carefully curated companions. Lady Zthoria Draxonis glided through her guests, her obsidian scales shimmering with embedded nanogems worth more than most humans would earn in 10 lifetimes. The serpentine dragoness swirled bioluminescent nectar in her crystal goblet, her golden eyes surveying the room with the satisfaction of someone who owned not just the venue, but most of the people in it. Another successful evening, wouldn't you agree, Ambassador Jackson? She purred to the human diplomat beside her, her voice carrying the melodic undertones that made draconian speech so hypnotic. Ambassador Jackson lifted his glass, his expensive exosuit automatically adjusting to his movement. The Foundation for Underprivileged Species raised 8 million credits tonight. Quite impressive, Lady Zthoria. The dragoness's inner membranes flickered across her eyes in what passed for a smile among her kind. The irony wasn't lost on her, charity for the underprivileged, hosted by beings who had systematically created that underprivilege. Elena Reed moved silently between the guests, her server's uniform marking her as invisible to the elite around her. For 15 years, she had worked as Lady Zthoria's personal attendant, cleaning the massive orbital mansion, preparing specialized meals for draconian dietary requirements, and raising her son Marcus on a service worker's meager salary. The dragons had arrived on Earth 70 years ago, not as conquerors but as business partners. Their advanced technology had propelled humanity to the stars, and in return, they gained access to Earth's resources and cultural artifacts. The relationship was called symbiotic, but everyone knew who held the real power. Dragons owned the corporations, lived in orbital mansions, and considered themselves genetically superior in every measurable way. Near the refreshment station, 17-year-old Marcus Reed stood with practiced invisibility, refilling glasses and clearing plates. His mother had secured him this temporary position, hoping it might lead to permanent employment. What Elena didn't know was that her son had been studying far more than the standard curriculum at his public education center. Lady Zthoria's wings twitched as her attention fell on the young human. An idea for entertainment suddenly sparked in her predatory mind. "You there, boy," she called out, her voice cutting through the ambient conversation. The room's attention shifted toward Marcus as he approached with measured steps, his posture perfect, his expression carefully neutral. "Yes, Lady Zthoria." The dragoness gestured toward an ornate table in the corner, its surface illuminating to reveal a holographic chessboard. The three-dimensional pieces glowed with intricate detail, a quantum projection system worth more than Elena's annual salary. "How about showing us how humans play Holochess in the habitation blocks?" Lady Zthoria's question drew chuckles from the surrounding guests. "I've always been curious about how simpler minds approach the game." Elena tensed, her serving tray trembling in her grip. She caught her son's eye, giving him the slightest shake of her head. "Don't make a scene," her expression pleaded. "We need this job." Marcus, however, simply bowed his head slightly. "I would be honored, Lady Zthoria." The dragoness seemed pleased with his compliance. "Excellent. I bet you've never played on a quantum projection board like this one. Each piece is worth more than your mother's yearly salary." Darius Hamilton, CEO of Orion Transport Enterprises, leaned toward his wife with a smirk. "I bet he doesn't even know that the neutron projector moves in a three-dimensional L pattern." More laughter rippled through the gathering. To the assembled elite, the idea of a service worker's child playing Holochess against a draconian was absurdly entertaining. It would be a brief, humiliating lesson in natural hierarchy. "Elena," Lady Zthoria called out with mock kindness, "you may pause your duties. I want you to watch your offspring attempt to play. It will be educational for both of you." As Elena moved to the side of the room, her eyes never leaving her son, she noticed something in Marcus's demeanor that made a few perceptive guests stop laughing. There was a stillness about him, like the space between stars before a supernova. Hidden genius. Lady Zthoria settled her massive form into a specially designed lounger, her wings folding elegantly behind her as she gestured to the glowing board. I always play the stellar faction. It's a family tradition. In Holochess, players chose between stellar forces, represented by various celestial bodies and phenomena, and void forces, represented by cosmic abstractions and dark matter constructs. The ancient game of chess had evolved into something that incorporated gravitational pulls, event horizons, and dimensional shifts. Marcus nodded without comment and took his position opposite the dragoness. His long, slender fingers hovered over the holographic pieces, not quite touching them as the board sensors recognized his presence and activated his player interface. "Let's make this interesting," Lady Zthoria announced to her audience. "If the boy manages to last more than 10 moves, I'll donate 1,000 credits to his district's education center." She paused for dramatic effect. "They can probably use it to upgrade their outdated neural interfaces." The laughter that followed had a cruel edge to it. Marcus remained motionless, but Elena caught a familiar gleam in her son's dark eyes, the same look he'd had at 9 years old when he told her he would someday show everyone who they really were. What the assembled guests didn't know was Marcus's hidden history. 8 years earlier, when he was only 9, he had discovered a discarded holopad in a recycling bin. The device was damaged but functional, containing an ancient library of chess games spanning from classical Earth chess to modern holographic variations played across 17 star systems. He had smuggled it home in his school satchel and asked Elena to help him understand the basic rules. "Why do you want to learn that, love?" his mother had asked, exhausted after a double shift cleaning Lady Zthoria's private chambers. "Because they always say dragons are smarter than humans, Mom. I want to know if that's true." Elena earned only 800 credits per month then. There was no money for neural enhancement lessons or private tutoring. But there was the public library, with its limited but free access to the Galactic Information Network. It became Marcus's second home. Every day after school, he walked 3 kilometers to study historical games, analyzing the strategies of grandmasters from 17 different species. He learned that chess transcended biology. It was about pattern recognition, strategic thinking, and the ability to see possibilities others missed. While his classmates played neural sim games, Marcus dissected the playing styles of legends, the geometric precision of crystalline masters, the fluid adaptability of aquatic grandmasters, and yes, even the methodical dominance of draconian champions. He discovered that each species had predictable patterns, weaknesses masked by their assumed superiority. Now, sitting across from Lady Zthoria, Marcus felt the weight of 8 years of secret preparation. The dragoness initiated the game with textbook precision, sliding her solar prominence piece forward, the classic Helios gambit opening that dragon hatchlings learned in their first century of life. "A traditional opening, dear boy," she said condescendingly. "Perhaps you've seen this before." Marcus responded instantly, moving his void remnant to counter. The holographic piece glided smoothly across the board, leaving a trail of simulated dark matter in its wake. The movement was executed with mechanical precision, too fast, too confident for a novice. An uncomfortable silence fell over the nearest guests. Ambassador Talia Voss, a seasoned human diplomat, moved closer to observe. Her cybernetic eye whirred softly as it focused on the board position. "Interesting," she murmured under her breath. Lady Zthoria hesitated for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for Marcus to confirm his suspicion that she had memorized opening sequences without truly understanding the gravitational principles behind them. She moved her neutron slider diagonally, following conventional wisdom rather than adaptive strategy. As the dragoness contemplated her next move, Marcus allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Tonight, 8 years of hidden study would finally serve their purpose. The opening gambit. Lady Zthoria's confidence began to waver as Marcus continued to respond to her moves with unsettling speed and precision. Each of his placements was executed in under 5 seconds, as if he were following a mental script memorized years ago. "Our little human is moving rather quickly," Lady Zthoria commented to her guests, a hint of annoyance creeping into her melodic voice. In proper Holochess, one should contemplate each move thoroughly. It was then that Marcus made his first psychological gambit. He paused, feigned deep thought for 15 seconds, and then moved his Void Guardian into position. To experienced players, the move telegraphed preparation for what the masters called the entropy cascade, a devastating mid-game strategy that few beings had the computational ability to execute properly. Ambassador Voss's cybernetic eye zoomed in on the board configuration. She had been Galactic chess champion during her diplomatic training, and she recognized the setup immediately. Her expression shifted from curiosity to something approaching alarm. "Lady Zthoria," she said carefully, "perhaps we should." "Nonsense," the dragoness interrupted, though her scales had begun to shift to a deeper shade of obsidian, a sign of stress among her kind. "The boy is simply mimicking patterns he's seen. There's no true understanding behind it." But there was understanding, and it ran deeper than anyone in the room could imagine. Marcus had spent countless hours studying not just draconian playing styles, but their psychological patterns. Dragons were apex predators who had evolved to dominate through size, intelligence, and social hierarchy. In chess, this translated to aggressive, territory-controlling strategies that relied on their opponent's intimidation. Lady Zthoria moved her Quasar Knight in what she believed was an attacking formation. It was a powerful piece, capable of bending spacetime around itself, but Marcus had anticipated this exact move 3 turns ago. He responded by advancing his dark matter bishop, a piece most players underestimated because its abilities were subtle rather than overtly powerful. The bishop could phase through other pieces under specific gravitational conditions, conditions that Marcus was now carefully creating. "Curious choice," murmured CEO Hamilton, though his earlier smugness had evaporated. "That bishop is practically useless unless..." He trailed off as the board's holographic display revealed the quantum possibilities surrounding Marcus's pieces. The young human wasn't just moving randomly, he was constructing a multidimensional trap. Elena watched her son with growing amazement and terror. She had always known Marcus was brilliant, but she had never seen him in an environment where that brilliance could fully manifest. The way he studied the board wasn't just intelligent, it was predatory, calculating in a way that reminded her uncomfortably of the dragons themselves. Lady Zthoria's next move came after nearly a full minute of deliberation, the longest she had taken so far. She advanced her Stellar Destroyer, a piece of overwhelming power that could eliminate multiple enemy units if positioned correctly. It was the kind of brute force move that dragons excelled at, and exactly what Marcus had been waiting for. He moved his Void Remnant again, this time positioning it in what appeared to be certain destruction. Several guests chuckled, assuming the boy had finally made the catastrophic error they'd been expecting. "Oh dear," Lady Zthoria said with mock sympathy, "I'm afraid your piece is trapped, young man. Perhaps next time you'll think more carefully before." She stopped mid-sentence as the board's projection system calculated the gravitational effects of the new position. Marcus's Void Remnant hadn't been trapped, it had created a localized spacetime distortion that altered the movement patterns of every piece within a 3-square radius. Suddenly, Lady Zthoria's powerful Stellar Destroyer found itself constrained, unable to attack without exposing her king piece to immediate capture. The predator had become the prey, and she hadn't even realized the trap was being set. For the first time in the evening, Lady Zthoria looked directly into Marcus's eyes. What she saw there made her scales ripple with involuntary unease. The 17-year-old human was smiling, not with arrogance or malice, but with the quiet satisfaction of a master craftsman admiring his work. The game was only 10 moves old, and Lady Zthoria was already losing. Masterful endgame. The gathered elite had fallen silent. What had begun as cruel entertainment had transformed into something none of them had anticipated, a genuine contest of intellect, and the dragon was losing. Lady Zthoria stared at the holographic board, her golden eyes darting between possible moves. Every option seemed to lead to further disadvantage. Her Stellar Destroyer, the piece she had counted on to dominate the board, was effectively neutralized by Marcus's spatial manipulation. "This is unprecedented," whispered Dr. Keveris, a renowned draconian strategist who had written 3 volumes on Holochess theory. The human's understanding of gravitational dynamics is remarkably sophisticated. Marcus moved his cosmic weaver forward, a piece that most players considered decorative. In the hands of a master, however, the weaver could connect distant parts of the board through quantum entanglement. The move appeared innocuous, but Ambassador Voss realized it had just sealed Lady Zthoria's fate. "Checkmate in 7 moves," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. Lady Zthoria's head snapped toward the diplomat. "Impossible. The game has barely begun." But it was true. Marcus had constructed a web of interdependent piece positions that would inevitably lead to the capture of her galactic core, the Holochess equivalent of a king. Every move she could make would only accelerate her defeat. The Dragoness tried a desperate gambit, sacrificing her neutron slider to create space for her trapped pieces. Marcus accepted the sacrifice without hesitation, then moved his dark matter bishop into position for the killing blow. "How?" Lady Zthoria demanded, her composure finally cracking. "You're just a service worker's child. This is impossible." For the first time since the game began, Marcus spoke. His voice was quiet but carried clearly across the now silent room. "You assumed intelligence was a product of wealth and breeding," he said, moving his void guardian into the final position. "But intelligence is about recognizing patterns, adapting to circumstances, and never giving up. My mother works 18-hour days to give me opportunities you take for granted. Every advantage you have was paid for by someone else's sacrifice." He gestured to the board, where Lady Zthoria's pieces were trapped in an inescapable configuration. "You studied Holochess as a child because it was expected of your social class. I studied it because I wanted to prove that a human could master something dragons considered their intellectual domain. You learned patterns from expensive tutors. I learned them from discarded technology and public library access. You play to maintain your superiority. I play to transcend my circumstances." Lady Zthoria's scales had shifted to a mottled gray-black, the draconian equivalent of a blush of humiliation. Around the room, guests stared in stunned silence. Some of the humans looked as shocked as their alien counterparts. They had internalized the belief in their own intellectual inferiority so deeply that seeing it challenged was almost traumatic. Marcus made his final move, a simple advance of his entropy catalyst that created a cascade failure in Lady Zthoria's defensive positions. The holographic display illuminated the word "checkmate" in brilliant blue letters. The game had lasted exactly 23 moves. Marcus had won in devastating fashion, using strategies that would have challenged grandmasters from any species in the known galaxy. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. Her son had done more than win a game. He had shattered decades of assumed hierarchy and proven that human potential was limitless when given the chance to flourish. The silence in the room stretched for nearly a full minute. Then, slowly, Ambassador Voss began to clap. The sound was tentative at first, then grew stronger as other humans in the room joined in. Even a few of the more progressive alien guests added their own species expressions of approval. Lady Zthoria remained motionless, staring at the board as if she could will the outcome to change. When she finally looked up at Marcus, her expression was unreadable. "Well played," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. But Marcus wasn't finished. He had one final move to make, and it wouldn't be on the Holochess board. Victory and vindication. Marcus stood up from the Holochess table, his composure remarkable for someone who had just accomplished the impossible. The room remained eerily quiet, as if everyone was still processing what they had witnessed. "Lady Zthoria," Marcus said with the same respectful tone he had maintained throughout the evening, "you mentioned a donation to my district's education center if I lasted 10 moves." The Dragoness nodded stiffly, her pride clearly wounded but her honor intact. "Indeed. 1,000 credits. I have a counter-proposal," Marcus continued, his dark eyes meeting her golden ones without flinching. "Instead of 1,000 credits to one education center, what if we made this victory meaningful for more than just my district?" Ambassador Voss leaned forward, intrigued. Around the room, conversation stopped as guests strained to hear what the extraordinary young human would say next. Tonight's charity gala raised 8 million credits for underprivileged species, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. But true charity isn't just about money, it's about opportunity. I propose the establishment of a scholarship program, the Holochess Mastery Initiative. Take talented young beings from service worker families across the 17 systems and give them access to the same educational resources that privilege provides. Lady Zthoria's membranes flickered rapidly, a sign of intense emotional processing among her kind. You want me to fund educational programs for service workers' children? I want you to fund potential, Marcus replied simply. Tonight proved that genius doesn't respect social boundaries. How many brilliant minds are we wasting because they happen to be born in habitation blocks instead of orbital mansions? CEO Hamilton stepped forward, his earlier smugness replaced by genuine interest. The boy has a point. Untapped intellectual resources represent massive economic inefficiency. Dr. Keveris nodded slowly. From a strategic perspective, expanding our talent pool across all social strata would strengthen the entire galactic community. Elena watched her son with pride and amazement. He had transformed his personal victory into a platform for systemic change, exactly the kind of thinking that would serve him well in whatever future he chose to pursue. Lady Zthoria was silent for a long moment, her ancient mind calculating possibilities. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a new tone of respect. Marcus Reed, she said, using his name for the first time, you have given me much to consider tonight. Your proposal has merit, and your demonstration of human potential has been illuminating. She gestured to Ambassador Voss. Talia, I want you to work with me on developing this scholarship program. If we're going to do this, we'll do it properly. The ambassador smiled. It would be my honor, Lady Zthoria. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, many stopped to speak with Marcus. Several offered him opportunities, internships, educational sponsorships, even job offers for when he completed his schooling. The young man who had entered the gala as invisible service staff was leaving as one of the most talked about individuals in the galactic elite. Lady Zthoria approached Elena as she prepared to resume her duties. Your son is remarkable, the dragoness said quietly. I have underestimated human potential for far too long. Elena met her employer's gaze steadily. Marcus represents what's possible when talent meets opportunity, regardless of species or social class. Indeed, Lady Zthoria agreed. I want to make you an offer, Elena. I need a new household administrator, someone who understands both service and excellence. The position comes with an orbital mansion residence, full educational benefits for Marcus, and a salary of 50,000 credits annually. Elena's eyes widened. It was more than she had earned in the past 5 years combined. There's one condition, the dragoness continued. Marcus must agree to teach Holochess to other young beings in our new scholarship program. His understanding of strategy and his ability to communicate complex concepts would be invaluable. Marcus, who had overheard the conversation, stepped forward. I accept, Lady Zthoria. But I have one request in return. Name it. I want to study under Dr. Keveris. If I'm going to teach strategy to others, I need to master it completely myself. The draconian strategist, who had been eavesdropping nearby, laughed with genuine delight. Young human, it would be my privilege to have such a dedicated student. As the family prepared to leave Elysium Prime that night, Marcus looked back at the orbital mansion one final time. In the space of a few hours, he had gone from invisible servant to recognized genius, from desperate poverty to unlimited opportunity. But more importantly, he had proven that human potential was boundless when given the chance to flourish. The game he had won was just the beginning. 6 months later, the Holochess Mastery Initiative had identified and sponsored over 200 gifted young beings from across the 17 systems. Marcus, now studying advanced strategy under Dr. Keveris while teaching younger students, had become something of a galactic celebrity. The program's success had sparked a broader conversation about talent recognition and social mobility. Several other dragon families had established similar initiatives, and human-dragon relations had improved significantly as both species recognized their mutual intellectual potential. Elena, now serving as administrative director for 3 orbital education centers, often reflected on that evening when her son had changed not just their lives, but the entire social dynamic of the galaxy. Lady Zthoria, meanwhile, had developed a genuine passion for identifying and nurturing young talent. She still lived in her orbital mansion and still enjoyed her position among the galactic elite, but she now understood that true superiority came not from genetics or wealth, but from the courage to recognize and develop potential wherever it might be found. Marcus Reed had played the game of his life that night, but his real victory wasn't on the Holochess board, it was in proving that intelligence, determination, and hope could triumph over any obstacle, regardless of the odds. In a galaxy that had accepted inequality as natural law, one young human had demonstrated that the only limits on achievement were the ones society chose to impose. And sometimes, it only took one brilliant game to change everything. The end.